Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to a culture conversation. I'm your host, Twin GQ. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody is surviving and thriving. Before we get started, we got a unique conversation today, a conversation that we've been working on behind the scenes. Given that Black History Month had recently passed, it's important that we highlight our advancements of the culture every day and not just when it's publicized in the media. Today we got a special guest hailing from the west of Canada. Somebody that's from Toronto, but is emerging their career outside their environment. Has developed a great and informative podcast with the Gifted Gab, and well as he's doing work with the collective for Black Iranians. So give a special shout out. With no further ado, my man Alex. What's up with you, bro? How you doing?
What's up, big dog? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for sure, bro. I appreciate you coming through, man. Like I've been seeing a lot of the stuff you've been doing with your podcast, and I love the growth, bro. And like I said, we've been building behind the scenes, so it's only right, bro.
Appreciate you, man. I think it's long overdue. I think we should have been done this a while back, but it's good to see kind of just, what you got going on with Culture Conversations and Twin GQ and just to laterally be watching the growth is it's inspiring, man. It's inspiring. You're doing good work over there.
Yeah, I appreciate you. You as well, bro. Like, before we get into our conversation, man, I just wanted to, like I said, man, like a big thing that I like seeing is, people leaving home and, building their platforms and advancing their careers outside of the city. Cause I feel like a lot of times we do have that like stigma where it's like, you don't want to leave home because, you don't want to leave everything, and you know what I mean, in terms of like opportunity and being comfortable. But to be able to see a person like you, we kind of grew up in the same, environments and we played ball and stuff like that. So to see you have the courage to kind of pick up what you're doing and kind of take it on the road and progress and advance, man, it's, that's inspiring for a person like me to see. Because you don't really see that. You feel like in our era and the people we kind of grew up with, it's like they want to stay at that same level. It's like they're kind of stagnant in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, man, like just growing up in Toronto, you learn how to just move wherever you go, because there's just so much going on in Toronto. Um, Not in a bad way, in a good way. I think you grow up really fast out there.
Hmm.
You learn a lot of things on the go, and for me, like you say we played ball and stuff. I really was able to come out here and play a little bit of basketball. I really had to force my way out here just to get an opportunity to play some hoops. And when I was out here, I really realized like you can really build something quickly outside of here because of the knowledge that you have, from a place where you see everything. You see Toronto's like got all the lights and cameras and glitter and all that stuff and the hustle. And you take that same mindset and take it anywhere. It doesn't have to be somewhere in a small market like Alberta. It could even be like you think about the trend of people going to LA, New York, all these different places that are outside what's normal to us. And any room you walk into there, you're bringing something refreshing. You're bringing something different. That perspective that we bring is gold. Especially in the environment, and the multiculturalism and the exposure to different kinds of people, different kinds of cultures, all that stuff that you're exposed to. You come to a new environment that might not have that same exposure. You know, the chips are stacked in your favor, and I think that in the relatively short amount of time that we've been able to be out here, of course, Andre was out here as well. We were really able to just see an opportunity or a whole to just be able to just create something and run with it, and we haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and just talking about that, one thing I wanted to mention, or I just wanted to hear like more of the origin story of your podcast, your upstart, the Gifted Gab. So kind of break down that story and like what that inception was like for you creating a podcast.
It's interesting, man, because when I actually had thought about the idea, um, I was still living in Toronto. I actually had wrote it on a notebook, like probably back in like 2016, 2017. a medium where we could just exactly what you're doing is like having conversations centered around culture, centered around, you know, personal development and stuff like that. But those times I didn't have the means. I didn't have the means. I didn't have the access to the equipment or anything like that to make that happen. So the idea just got put on the back burner. And then when I was out here in Edmonton, when I came back to Edmonton, right, this time I wasn't playing ball. When I came back, you know, me and Andre we knew each other from the city, and you know, when you're out of town in a place that you might not be really familiar with, you know, you tend to, um, you know, hang out with the people you know, and you know, me and Andre, you know, we have dinners at Cactus Club and have these conversations, and you know, that cliche where everybody's like, yo, the people are just sitting in a restaurant, they're like, yo, we should start a podcast. That's exactly what happened. Like, we were sitting there and we were just having a deep conversation about kind of just like legacy and kind of like, you know, leaving behind some sort of mark, especially after Nip died, you know, that conversation and that question started really running through my mind. Is like, yo, if I drop dead tomorrow, you know, what are people going to remember me for? What's the impact? You know, what are people going to say about me? You know, me and Andre were talking about that, and we had said, you know, let's do something, man. Let's do something and kind of find a way to shift culture. And Andre actually came up with the name, the Gifted Gab. It was his. I can't take credit for that, you know. That was all him,
Feel you. I feel you.
you
Shout
know.
out to Andre Quick one time.
Hell yeah, you know. So,
Oh man.
and then we said, okay, let's do this. Let's do this podcast thing. You know, let's figure out how does it work. You know, do some research and in the beginning, you know, we were only doing audio. You know, we were only doing audio episodes, and off the strength of just the audio, we were like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, there's some traction right away. And then I think 8 episodes in, our goal was always 7 episodes because the research that I did was like, it always said that most podcasts stop at 7. Like, 7 is usually the number that most people quit at or before, you know. So for us, it was just about getting to 7. Let's just get to 7. And it was tough to get to 7 because we didn't have no studio, so we were renting a lot of free spaces. You know, we were going to the public library. We were there were some places on campus that we were renting out, and it was a gong show. Like, we couldn't, like, there was times we would go in the studio 10 times, maybe come out with 3, 4 episodes. You know, the process was just a mess because, you know, we had never ever done anything like this. But once we had gotten to 7, I think 8 was like when we found our groove, and we were just happy to be at 8, you know. And then Andre comes one day and he's like, "Man, we got to do video. You know, we're too handsome to not be on camera."
Feel you, bro.
You know.
Yup.
So after episode 8, we're like, okay, man, like, that's it's just another challenge on top of it because the first challenge is just get it to 7. So then we're like, okay, let's figure out what needs to happen for us to kind of do a video podcast, and now at this point, you know, I think we're 80 episodes in, something like that. We're on year 3 now, and our biggest problem was consistency. So now we're just like, okay, we figured out the formula. So now that we know what we're doing, it's just about being consistent. So our goal this year is like, we gotta just have 50 episodes. That's it, straight like that. You know, but it took so
Yeah.
much time to just figuring out that process, and we were like, you know what, we were willing to do this for free, and if that's the case, then we should make sure that we're able to do it for as long as possible, right? And then that was that we just like that, we didn't put any pressure on ourselves to really come out the gate and be successful, you know, or really think about, okay, well, like, shoot, we're not getting numbers, you know, we never really get down, we just keep going. And
Yeah.
that's been that's kind of the origin story. And Kelly's been, you know, just even his growth has been crazy, just seeing him transition from sports to media and film and television. And it's been really, really, for me, just inspiring to watch, you know. But that's how it started, and
Mm-hmm.
now we're like, now we look at it. We don't even look at ourselves in a podcast anymore. We're carrying ourselves more like a brand. We're trying to have the brand itself represent what we want it to represent. Storytelling, dialogue. Being gifted, just the gift of just being yourself. Um, and now we're here. I'm happy with where it's at, and who knows where we can take it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. First thing I would want to highlight is the importance of understanding that you never limited or had self-imposed limitations on what your show could become, right? We talk about you and Andre getting down with the idea, but also understanding that this is going to live past the podcast, right? And you talk about branding and marketing and media as a whole, right? And a lot of the opportunities that come from that representation of your podcast, right? And storytelling is really big. Content creation is really big as well, right? So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the challenges now that you have, now when you're entering into a different space like TV and film, right? How do you now switch from being a creator on a podcast show to now going into TV and film where somebody is writing the script for you, or you know what I mean? You got to kind of put a different hat on as a creative.
It's interesting actually that you say that because you know, one of the reasons we started the podcast, I don't know, some people know, but I've been doing like commercial and print modeling for probably like 7 years now, and the reason
Congrats.
of
Well, that's
yeah,
big.
I just thought about it the other day. I'm like, damn, it's really been like 7 years, and
Yeah,
one of
that's
the reasons we
big.
started the podcast for me personally was like, I wanted to be able to be respected for like the lens and how I like what's up here. You know what I mean? Um, Modeling and performance arts are really can be really shallow and deep at the same time. But I think print modeling is probably the shallowest, right? So you know, transitioning into podcasting was already a challenge because I'd never done it, right? And then just off the strength of doing the pod, you know, I was like, okay, well, I have this modeling experience, I have some representation, you know, let me see if I can take it a step further. Um, and I approached a bunch of agents. I went out there and just emailed a bunch of agents and I said, I want representation in not just modeling, but also acting. And, my agent, who the only one who actually responded to me and ended up picking me up, he said, do you have any experience in acting? I said, I'm taking classes and, I do a podcast. And he's like, you know what? Just put that on your acting resume. And it was, at the time I was like, okay, well, it's not actually acting experience, but it does show people that you were able to do something and execute something or create something, because in this industry, as you know, they just want to see like, what's your credits like? What have you worked on? And for a guy that didn't have any credits, I had training and stuff, but I'd never been on a production before. But for them to look and be like, okay, well, he's got his own podcast, that kind of just establishes a little bit of credibility. It might not, like, I know when I get into a room and there's producers and actors and all these people in here, I know I don't have, a tenth of the credits that they have, but I know that I can build something from scratch. You know what I mean? And that's probably the most important skill that you can ever have in life is, can you build something from scratch? Because if something crumbles, you can build it up again. So the transition for me was more so like, it wasn't about getting in where I fit in, but it was more so like making sure that these people respected my track record, even though it wasn't like theirs. I haven't been in, 50, 60 productions. I haven't worked on any films or anything like that at that point. And then it ended up getting me my first acting gig, on a television show for CBS. Small role, I had a couple of lines and stuff, but I'd never done any background work, so it was a big leap, especially when I was talking to some of my friends that are actors and stuff. Um, so the transition was more so about just being fearless and just saying like, "Yo, I have something to add to this," regardless of whether my resume, you know, speaks on that or not. You know, it's just like I have something to bring here, and I'm just trying to figure out a way to navigate that. And you know, I'm still I'm still figuring it out, man. Like I'm not really,
Yeah,
you know, we're never satisfied. You know how it is, man. It's like you look at something old
absolutely.
and you're like, damn, bro, like I was really putting out this stuff, you know, but that's
Hmm.
just growth, you know. So it's really just, I think that, you know, when you're a content creator or entrepreneur, anybody that's just doing something on your own, you're really in personal development because that's the only thing that's going to take you to the next step. Is like, yo, can I say that this thing that I did this time is better than the last one, or am I personally getting
Hmm.
better than the last thing? You know, so that's all it's been. And then, you know, I feel like, you know, guys like us that come and create these podcasts, you know, there's a running joke on right now about how men refuse to go to therapy and just start a podcast. You know what I mean? But for me, like turning on those mics and turning that camera on was the best therapy I could ask for because it really, because you putting yourself out there was like, you gotta, you can't just be, you know, this person on camera and then be a total contradiction in your real life. You have to, you know, walk the walk and talk the talk, right? Or the opposite,
Absolutely.
or the opposite way, the other way around, talk the talk and then walk the walk, right? You got to
And
really
walk the
embody
walk. Yeah,
whatever it is that you're preaching. So, you know, starting the podcast for me was I think everything I needed that, you know, put that accountability back in my hands and said, you want to get to this level, it's going to require a different you. So that transition was more so just about being aware of what I'm not good at, and being aware of what I can bring to the table. And that's just that perspective. And that's what's, you know, allowed me to just be able to keep doing this. You know, I don't think it's at a high level yet, but we're getting to that point, right?
absolutely. And I think the theme or the gist of that message is, you know, you just never know until you try. You know what I mean? Like you can start a podcast and, you know, be a director of a film, right? Going into the emergence of creative arts or as a creative, you just never know where your work can take you, you know? So I wanted to ask you how the work of the podcast or the development of the podcast inspired or influenced you with the work that you're doing with the collective.
Man, it's crazy because if I never started the podcast, there's no collective because I think it was, you know, there's six of us as co-founders, and our head co-founder, she had discovered me through my podcast. She had just tuned into the podcast. She was following the podcast, and then one day she had reached out to me and said, you know, I really like your work, and we had conversations, and we built a relationship over, you know, I think a year and a half, and one day we had just sat there, and she was like, I have this idea, and you know, I love ideas, and we had to go back and forth, and we were like, you know, starting a collective for Black Iranians. It was right around the time of you know, the George Floyd movement. You know, we saw that you know, being Iranian, I saw a lot of Iranians in the community talking about being in defense of Black lives and things of that nature, but it hadn't been at the advisory of Black people that were in their own community. You know what I mean? Like, as an
Yeah.
Iranian, are you aware of the fact that you guys have Black communities in your nation? You know where you guys come from. So it was really ignorant. I felt like, you know, to be, you know, trying to like try to do this work without the work on the back end of all these other people that you guys have just left out of the picture, you know, like completely left out of the narrative. You know, it was like Iranian is in defense of Black lives or something like that. I don't know. And it was like, well, what am I missing here? You know what I mean? Because I go back home to Iran and, you know, I'm hanging out with my mom's family. It's like, it's a whole town of Black people out here, you know, but we're never ever represented. Nobody talks about it. Not that it needs to be talked about, but it's like a lot of things are just not acknowledged, you know, and I think that, you know, that theme of that acknowledgement, you know, of just being aware of what's going on within those borders is so important, especially when you're trying to get into discourse about representation and injustice and things of this nature. It's not just about what's going on this side of the world. And we're everywhere as Black people. You know what I'm saying? Like, civilization started in the motherland. Like, when you think about it like that, it's like, okay, there's some relearning that needs to go on. So out of that, that's where the collective started. And we were like, we're going to create this organization. It'll be international. And we're going to move that needle and rewrite ourselves into history through art, whether it's, like visual arts, film, education, all those things, and we really, really, not to toot my own horn, but we really came on, on social media and really changed the way people are using social media. Now you're coming to our platform and you're coming here to learn something. You're coming here to really, like, real relearning, right now we're just finishing up our website. We're redoing our website and stuff, and that will be the hub for all our content. But until then, we built the awareness on Instagram, on Twitter, and it caught steam. We've been able to do a lot of dope things so far. I started working on the short films and stuff through that initiative.
Nice.
And I was like, damn, like, I really like this storytelling thing. It really started with the Gifted Gab, but now look at where it's taken me. And it's really allowed me to kind of just be really, really comfortable in what I'm doing, because there's no conflict of interest with anything I'm doing. Everything is just kind of, it's vertically integrated with all the aspects of my identity. And that's what really, when people are like, yo, you make this thing look so easy, I'm like, bro, it is. Because everything I'm doing is just so true to me as an individual. There's no compromise on any of my values, on anything I'm doing. And it really makes for a seamless process, a seamless creative process. My creative negotiation in my head is not conflicting at all, and it allows me to, be efficient and create over here and the same thing over here, so yeah, man, if there was no Gifted Gab, there probably wouldn't be no collective either, man. So it's amazing just what putting yourself out there can do for you. It can do wonders.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're in a position, because I guess us as Black content creators and creatives, I feel like we have a sense of leadership within our community, but also empowering and educating, right? You spoke a little bit about the notion of educating through our platforms, right? So I just wanted to ask you, like, if you ever feel a sense of, leadership and, like, just paying it forward to, like, the next crop of Black creatives coming up, because I feel like it's important. Like I said it earlier on the episode previous, like, the importance of creating platforms to, inform our masses, right? Like, I feel like as African Americans or Black Canadians, we don't have the resources, we don't have the access to education opposed to our counterparts. So I think that we do have to live up to that expectation of being leaders by creating things like podcasts, media channels, collectives, initiatives that would advance our culture and raise the consciousness. You know what I mean? Because I think that you are what you consume,
absolutely,
whether we like it or not. So I think, like, as as an ethnic group, right? Like, we are the biggest consumers of, brands and all these things. But I feel like it's very important for us to hold each other accountable and understand that we need to inform and educate each other through our platforms. So I think it's an amazing job, and it's dope to always see guys like you, developing and pushing the needle and changing the agenda, creating the narrative for guys like us. Like, you know what I mean? And, like, the people in Toronto now are I think there's, like, a little cultural shift happening that I'm seeing in the media space, where they want to create a space that amplifies more Black voices, tells more Black stories, and stuff like that. So when I see those things from, a more granular, like, point of view, I understand, like, the importance of, the sense of responsibility for us to continue to push these conversations and, create these narratives for our people,
100%, man. I think, as Black people, we don't really realize how much power we hold, whether it's buying power, whether it's, when it comes to the culture, we talk about culture conversations. We are culture. We are, like, straight like that. Like, nothing is cool until we say it's cool. Nothing. You think about all these trends you see on TikTok, all these things you see on TV, all the hairstyles, the clothes, like everything. Like, you think about all these rappers and they're wearing designer and stuff. And then when you walk around, you see that's what's imitated. It's because we have that power, that buying power, and we do have a responsibility. It's up to us to say, okay, you know what? I know this. I know how this works. I got to show somebody else. I got to show one person that I know how this stuff works. You know what I'm saying? Or I know about this brand. Or I know about, you know what I mean? Like we have so much power and word of mouth and influence. And I think we don't realize, it, man. Like, we don't really take it in. Like, if as a community, we just came together and said, yo, like, this is who we should be buying from. This is what we should be consuming. This, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're just so distracted. And right now, it's like this, it's information overload, man. Like, there's too much information. So we don't know
Mm-hmm.
where to focus our attention because just so much. There's so much of everything everywhere. So, that's why trusted people like us, like when we create platforms like this, right? What me and you are doing, we become sort of like gatekeepers or co-signers to what's cool, you know? And so it's like, when I started doing the podcast, my perception on brands and stuff like that was one thing, but now it's like, I'm wearing something, this is a Gifted Gab jacket, one of one, but you know what I mean? But,
Ooh,
but,
that's fire right there, bro.
because I'm like,
That's fire.
why should I wear like this stuff that, these people don't even know who I am, or like this DND shirt, you know what I mean? Shout out, Ferris, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's guys around us that are creating dope stuff, you know what I'm saying? I think about the stuff you're doing with TGQ, you know what I mean? Like, we are all creators, you know what I'm saying? We all have gifts, but we still want to go and spend our money with people who wouldn't even look twice in our direction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, it's some
talk
real
about
stuff.
it.
And I really seen that more, when we started opening these businesses here in Edmonton, when like the rugs and the hair care and stuff like that. It's like, man, like, there's some cultures out here that really have a monopoly on some of these markets. How is that possible? That's why I peeped game. I said, yo, who's selling the black hair products? Not black people most of the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Well,
crazy. It was mind boggling to me. I really got
yeah.
into it. And I'm like, damn, like, as a community, we have a lot of work to do. And I'm not saying that, I'm perfect and I'm always shopping, but I try to be conscious
Mm-hmm.
about it. But
Mm-hmm.
as a community, as individuals, we got all that power. We have all of that, but I think sometimes we're really, really distracted. We're really distracted. And we sometimes don't see what's right in front of us. It's like the progress that we
Mm-hmm.
can make together is crazy. And I see Toronto is like, I don't care what anybody says. Toronto is the most unique city in the world. It's the best city in the world in my eyes. I love New York. I love LA. And I love these places, but nothing is like Toronto. Nothing. There's so much culture. We have arguably the best talent. You know what I mean? And we just don't really take in. I think we take it for granted. I was taking it for granted when I was living there. Now when I'm like, man, I'd love to be back in Toronto doing what I'm doing now. Because that's the port. What New York was to the world, Toronto is to the States, right? Like, everything has to go through that side over there. Everything has to go through Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, as a community, we have so much power, so much culture. Doesn't matter what it's, black, white, orange, yellow. brown, don't matter. Everybody can come together and just do some really dope things if we put our minds to it. And there are, comedians, um, singers, rappers, artists, like just like visual artists, filmmakers. There's some guys doing some dope things, content creators like us. We're really becoming the
Yeah,
hub. You don't have to go to LA no more. You don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to any of these places. The internet is that powerful that if you have something to offer, you can find the right crowd for it, right?
exactly. And talking about the internet era now, I look at ourselves as digital nomads where we have an acquired skill that we can pick up and do it from anywhere in the world. So knowing that now, just talk a little bit about leaving home and trying to now build or excel or advance your career in an environment that now has become your second home, right? Because obviously, if you're coming from Toronto, you think, oh, I don't want to leave home because opportunities might be slim. My career might be derailed. I got to now go through the process of rebuilding. You know what I mean? So just talk a little bit about that experience for you and how you were able to see opportunity with the new change in scenery for yourself.
Man, coming out here for me was like, I think being in Toronto, you don't get enough time to yourself. I think that I don't think that there's nothing wrong with the city of Toronto. Let me get that. Let me just like nip that right in the bud. Toronto was everything for me, but there's too much going on in Toronto that it's very difficult to kind of just hear your own voice amongst all the noise. So when I came out here, the first time, because I had multiple stints out here, my first time coming out here, I spent 6 months out here, and I was in Calgary, and it was too slow for me. It was so slow that my time was so idle that was so uncomfortable because I'm so used to going to bed with the window open, hearing people on the street, hearing pigeons on the balcony, hearing the bus going by. So now you're in a place where there's none of that, and all you have is you and your thoughts, which is very uncomfortable. You think about like being in prison, that's all you got is your thoughts, right? So now I'm in this place. I'm not comparing this place to prison, but I'm just saying like being
Yeah.
that pace, like that slow pace, really had me uncomfortable. And the first 6 months I couldn't handle it. I came back to Toronto because it was so foreign to me, that concept, right? But then I was like here, and I'm like back in Toronto. I'm like, you know what? I'm getting mixed up in some things that I don't really want to be mixed up in. Let me go back. Let me try it out for real this time. And then that time that I was able to just be here by myself, then your individuality starts to come through a little bit, because you'll realize really quickly when you spend time by yourself how much you actually don't like to do, what you don't like to do. You don't like going out all the time. You don't like having to go out to restaurants like every night of the week. You don't like having to leave your house and spend $300 just because you left your house. You know what I'm saying? Like what starts to come out is like, okay, now you got to be a little bit more intentional, right? So now my time became much more intentional. Whereas when I was in Toronto, I wasn't really intentional with my time. I was kind of just going through the motions. And I remember just people would ask me like, what are you doing? Da, da, da. I would be like, I'm just going with the flow. But you don't want to go. You never want to go with the flow. Dead fish go with the flow. You know what I mean? You want to take charge and be assertive in the things you're doing, and that's what intent is about. And when I was out here, I started to see like, okay, I got to be much more intentional with how I'm spending my money, what I'm doing with my free time. I came out here and started reading. Growing up, my parents put books in my hands, but living in Toronto, there was no time for me to read. I didn't have time to do that. You know what I mean? But when I came out here, now I'm starting to read a lot more. Now I'm starting to invest in my own knowledge and my own understanding of things a lot more. Deciding that I want to finish my degree. That's the thing. That's the decision I made when I was out here. You start thinking about things to better you from a personal development standpoint. And, it's not really the location. It's just the solitude that's important. It's like being able to just be alone, away from noise that is not really aligned with what you're trying to do, right? And carving out that identity or individual that you want to become, right? And then you start to ask yourself, like, okay, these things that I'm doing aligning with who I want to become, right? It's really easy to just, 5 days out of the week, not be doing what you want to be doing in place with the lot going on, right? So now, at this age that I'm at, after all this stuff that I've been through, I've been able to carve out exactly who I want to become. So, okay, now I can go to spend time in Toronto. I can live in Toronto now because there's more grounded understanding of what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to become. Right? I didn't have the opportunity to really carve that out for myself when I was out there. And that's not a knock on the city. That's just a knock on the environment of so much going on. And it's like, it's really easy to get caught up in that. Right. So being out here was the solitude, the pace. Right. But it's a life hack, man. Being able to just leave your environment is truly a life hack because, like I said,
Talk about it.
that solitude, just being somewhere by yourself, you have to start asking yourself. You have to start talking to the voice in your head. That's the only person you can talk to after a while. And then you start asking yourself questions like, man, like, do I even really like pizza that much that I'm eating it 3 times a week? What am I doing it for? And it was interesting because, being in Toronto, everything for me was always about basketball, and I came out here and I was still trying to play basketball and force that. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of other stuff that I can do. It doesn't have to be about hoops, right? And that was the best thing for me. I loved hoops and I loved everything that Toronto taught me because it gave me enough tools to come out here and really carve something special out for myself out here. But I tell everybody, anybody that's watching this, listen to this. If you have the chance to go somewhere by yourself and get out of your comfort zone, do it. Even if you have nobody that wants to go to that place that you want to go to, just go by yourself. I was thinking about it the other day. I think I was talking to someone and saying, like, I've never actually traveled with anybody. Anywhere I've ever gone, I'm either walking and getting on a plane by myself. Vegas
That's
one night by
dope.
myself before I met up with my homie. When I was in LA, I met like the co-founders from the collective out there, but I was by myself when I went out there initially. On my trip to New York, I went by myself. Philadelphia by myself. Iran by myself. All these places that I went to, I was alone. And we don't give ourselves time by ourselves.
For sure, bro. I think, man, there's like two things that really came to my mind when you were talking about just leaving home. You know what I mean? And it's that idea that, like I said, your social norms or what you were taught kind of stays with you when you're in your environment. And you already know, like, the people we grew up with and the circles we grew up in around, a lot of those people haven't left home before. You get what I'm saying? So when you're around that, sometimes you don't want to leave because of that.
It's comfortable.
But like we always say, like, new levels come from, new environments. You know what I mean? And the only way you can, advance in life is to, go to different environments. So it's good that you mentioned the importance of, like, leaving home and learning these things that were paramount to your success. You know what I mean? And we've seen it actually full display. I was going to talk about that Kanye documentary. So let's tap in with it, man. What was your thoughts on the docuseries that Kanye West put out with his creative team on Netflix?
Man, to be honest with you, man, it really lit a fire under me because I took 3 things away from it. The first thing I took away from it was, your relationship with your parents can really be a great head start in life. And I'm not talking about financially. I'm not talking about materialistic things. I'm talking about just that belief, that erratic arrogance that people know Kanye for, that rubs people the wrong way, is because of his mother. That belief is the foundational thing. Like, you need that to be successful in anything. You really have to believe that whatever it is that you see in your head, like you're going to work towards making that come to fruition, because you want to go by the numbers and stats and stuff like that. They'll deter you from pursuing whatever it is that you're passionate about. When you want to, and that's why I don't really rock with people that go to business school. I think that is a poor investment, because if you truly want to do something as an individual and you want to make an impact in the world, that's a vision that you got to have in your own head that numbers will probably not back up. The idea of starting a podcast, of starting a talk show, the numbers will say that that's impossible. You know what I'm saying? But you have to have that faith in yourself and that irrational belief that you have what it takes to make that happen, because the numbers will say that you can't. The research will say that you can't, right? People will look at it and be like, oh, this is not a good investment. It's not a good investment of your time and money. But that can't really be what you base your vision off of. And I think that Kanye really showed that in that documentary, is that belief that he has in himself was from his mother. His mother was his biggest fan. They're sitting there rapping songs together.
She
He
knew
pulled up
every word.
every word.
Yeah, she knew every word. That was getting me hyped.
He pulled up with the chain, and she says to him, Kanye, you haven't got a house yet, but this is nice. You know what I'm saying? Like that discourse between you and your parents, the person that gives you birth. You know what I mean? You want that to be like that. You don't want your parents to be like, oh, you're still doing that damn podcast. You know what I mean? Like what kind of negative talk is that? You know what I mean? And then when you think about like your positive self-talk, we talk a lot about, when we talk about mental health and stuff, and we're talking about self-talk. I had a guest on the Gifted Gab who said, you hear these voices in your head telling you these things like the imposter syndrome. It's like, whose voice is that? Whose voice is telling you that you're not good enough to do this? So what I've seen with Kanye is that he had voices telling him that he is good enough to do this constantly. So that belief is not, people think it just comes out of thin air. No, it's molded. That's the first thing. The second thing was, Kanye is really ahead of his time. You think about like Gary Vee talking about document everything. Like Kanye started that in 1995, 1996. Which
21 years in the making, bro. They said for this doc, man. That's crazy, bro.
Crazy to think about. You know what I mean? 21 years. But that's part of not just the creative team, but that comes back to that unwavering belief in himself. From like, yo, I'm gonna be big. Like, capture this from now. And then the sheer work ethic, man. Like, to walk into the part that had me is when he walked into Rockefeller. He's playing his tracks and he's looking at the camera and he's like, nobody's feeling it. And it just shows that like you gotta believe in your own brand before anybody else will believe in it. And it's really difficult to be successful in something if you don't believe in it. Which is why I'm so adamant on just like finding what excites you. You could see how that stuff, how being the best dressed rapper excited Kanye. You could see how it excited, the idea of that excited him, right? The idea of, leaving the production and stepping into this lane excited him. And he blew all the expectations out of the water. And I'm like, yo, man, like I was saying to Bars, my bro, I'm like, man, as a creator, as an individual that's trying to carve out a path for yourself, this documentary is so important because it shows that foundational belief is so necessary and that you can make it happen. I think the documentary humanizes Kanye a lot, despite the mental health issues, the fame, the God complex, I think it really humanized him and showed that he's just a guy, especially when I was listening to Donda and before the documentary came out, I'm listening to what he's saying on the tracks and the inspiration of having his mother on the album and the house, just having the house in the arena really shows that Kanye is just a regular guy. He's just a regular guy. there's nothing that Kanye does that's really special. It's that he just put the time into his craft. You know, he started at a young age, and his mother invested in him by buying him that little the beat pad. You know,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and I'm just like, man, like if I hope that people watch that documentary, because I think that too many people look at Kanye West and see all the negative. It's really easy to look at him and see the negative, you know, the red hat, the Kardashian stuff, you know, the all of this negativity that's surrounding Kanye. But really just look at him as a human and see that, yo, he just put his mind to something, to several things. He got it done. The documentary shows kind of how prophetic he is, saying that I'm gonna be the best dressed rapper in the game. You know,
Yeah.
I'm up there with the Jays and the Nas's, and he is. I think he's the biggest. Hov is the greatest of all time. Let me just put that out there for now. He's the greatest rapper of all
Talk
time.
about it.
I think we can
Talk
agree
about
on
it.
that. But there
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been a bigger artist than Kanye West since Michael Jackson. He's the biggest since Mike, you know. And that documentary kind of just showed that it doesn't actually really take that much to be great at something. You know, it just takes focus and belief. That's it. Those are two, you know, if you can cut out all the distractions, if you can pick up and go somewhere like New York, which he did, to focus on his career and really just focus on being great and being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people, working on your craft, even though people don't mess with it. You know, like that's all it takes. And people are like, well, that's such a simple way to look at it. But like, it is really that simple.
Yeah, man. Like, first and foremost, like I feel like that is probably one of the best documentaries that I've seen in a long time.
100%.
Uh,
100%.
The Last Dance, cool, love it. Jordan, GOAT, storytelling, amazing. From the context of timeline, unique. But I just feel like how they captured imperative moments of Kanye's life at the definitive period, it's undefeated. It's undefeated. Like never
Undefeated.
been done.
Undefeated.
You know what I mean? The way they fused the contrast of Super 8 film with like regular camcorder film,
Beautiful. It was artistic, man.
like that's what I'm saying. Visually, it was a masterpiece. From a
Absolutely.
storytelling aspect, man, like I've never seen anything like that in a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show how big Black creativity is. You know
It's
what I
big.
mean? Because Kudi and Chike, the directors, producers, creative team, they actually now have leverage because, you know, they sold that documentary to Netflix for 30 million.
Well deserved.
Right? If you ask me,
It's kind of low.
I think we should have ran it up to 100 if we're
Right.
being honest.
Real talk.
But we got to start somewhere, right? Like we said, we got to start somewhere where, you know, we kind of make this the gold standard, right? Like, you know, maybe this inspires the next crop of creatives to create our own Kanye like story. You get what I'm saying? But just seeing that as a Black creative and understanding that there is a person like you that grew up with an ambition, that had the desire to become great. And I think that kind of encapsulates like everything that you're doing, and it just reaffirms that everything that you want to do is possible.
Absolutely.
With the belief in self and understanding that you're gonna have to work. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, bro, it was, man, I honestly, like I said, I watched that, I'm just like, yo, Last Dance was cool, but nah, this is different.
It's one of my favorites for sure, man. I think it was the way it was done artistically. I think it's so artistic, the way they put the film together and how they juxtaposed like faith. And faith is a big theme in that film, and I think it goes over a lot of our heads. It went over my head at first, and I'm like, man, like this is a really like deep film that kind of, you know, you talk about Kanye West, like the guy who made Jesus Walks, right? Like, you know, showcasing just his all the struggles and all the dark stuff that made him the artist that he is. Like, I think it's beautifully done, like great on Chige and Kudi, like to just capture those beautiful moments that made Kanye who he is. And I think for them as filmmakers, they're just getting started.
Absolutely. So we're going to segue to our little rapid fire game we do here on the podcast called Quick Hitters. So I'm going to ask you a quick question, and it's like fireside rapid where you got to answer. So the first question we're going is your top 3 favorite podcast shows. Obviously, disregarded your podcast show. I know you probably put that in there. But yeah, so your top 3 pod shows to kind of listen to.
I really like Earn Your Leisure is my favorite podcast, man. I think
EYL, shout out to the fam out there. Rashad and Troy, y'all is doing it, man. Shout out to Earn Your Leisure one time. That's big.
Earn Your Leisure for sure. Despite all the controversy, I think Joe Rogan is still the gold standard when it comes to podcasting.
Okay.
I'm very disappointed in kind of all the stuff that's surrounding him, but
Yeah.
I can't deny that he's just good at what he does when it comes to the conversational element. And then third, this might catch people off guard, but I actually listened to a podcast called Aries Today because of my horoscope. It's like a 2-minute podcast that I just listen to every morning. That kind of just a little bit of positivity before I start the day.
That's what's up.
Yeah, so those are my 3.
Okay. And then your dream travel destination.
My dream travel destination. Ooh, that's a good one. Man.
Yeah, so if you had an opportunity, like if you had an opportunity to go anywhere in the world right now, like you could pick anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I'd probably say Zanzibar, man. I just did with the collective. I've been really, really trying to trace like my roots. And I did one of the ancestry tests, and I found out that I'm half Congolese, half Tanzanian. So I know that the Iranians did go down to Zanzibar, so I kind of want to just go and see like kind of that culture, that mix of the culture of Black and Iranianness. So Zanzibar is a place that I gotta go to. That's at the top of my list.
And then your top 5 creatives or business moguls. So I'm gonna just put it like this: if you could be in the room with any 5 business moguls or creatives, like who would it be? So it could be a mixture of both.
Man, this is a great question. Because I actually have this written on my board at home. Hove, for sure, like 100%, no question. Hove is there. Another person probably would have been Nip, right? I don't know if I can use him.
God bless his soul.
That's a guy.
Yeah, of course, obviously, here as in the spiritual form for life.
He actually died on my birthday, so I really kind of hit home for me. So definitely I put Nip in there. A third person I'd probably put in there is 50 Cent. I think his transition from music to television is flawless. What he's doing with Power and all these shows, BMF and stuff like that. That's 3. Man, who else? I gotta put a filmmaker in there. Spike Lee, man. Spike Lee.
The GOAT right there.
GOAT, man. He's the GOAT. Between him and there's a bunch of filmmakers that I love, but Spike has really this defined style, and he's been able to make a really sustainable just business model out of his filmmaking. Just having his production studio and stuff like that. That's definitely a guy I'd love to be in the same room as. And what, I got 2 more left?
You got Nip, you got Jay-Z, you got Spike 50. Lee, 50 Cent, so you got 1 more.
I got 1 more. I got 1 more. I'll probably have to say Kanye, man. I think his just to see the creativity at work. I think he is a business mogul. The way he's built his brand and stuff like that as an artist. There's some other moguls that I would want to be in the same room as, but I think that some of them write books and stuff, so I think I could just read that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the right room to be in. You got Hove, Ye, and Nip. That's a whole lot of spending power there, plus knowledge, you know?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. So we're gonna be wrapping up the podcast, but before we get out, I would like you to take some time to, address our audience as well as your own on where they can kind of follow up with any upcoming projects you got going on, anything to stay in tune for the near future. Just let them know where they could tap in with you on the social or the media side.
Absolutely. Obviously, you can check us out at The Gifted Gab. We're on all social media platforms. We do YouTube as well. You can just go straight to our website at thegiftedgab.com. The collective for Black Iranians. I'm sure if you type Black Iranians in Google, will pop up somewhere. History has kind of it's been one-sided up until now, so this is us trying to rewrite it and write ourselves back into it. So really, please follow the work of the collective. Share the word. I know you might have some Iranian listeners that are probably like Black Iranians.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then for me personally, I'm on Instagram as always a flex. I'm actually working on my first documentary right now, so I haven't really been talking about it much. I kind of just want to get it done type thing, But that's kind of one of the projects we got going on. And then if you guys are shopping for furniture, Cushon Persian rugs, we sell rugs. And what else? What else do we do? Afro Era hair and beauty supplies. Sprayed up is courtesy of Afro Era.
So, yes, sir. Yep. Us. Yeah, for sure, bro. Well, I appreciate you stopping by and blessing our podcast for real. And like I said, man, I admire the work that you do, to be able to kind of carve a unique career in the content space as well as the media industry, man, has, been a sight to see, bro. Keep doing what you're doing, man. And I know we're going to be collaborating in the near future, bro.
Man, I appreciate you for having me, man. You're doing great work. You're taking a lot of initiative, just, putting yourself out there and giving these people this free game and these conversations. It's really beautiful to see, and watching you has been inspiring to me, man. So keep doing what you're doing. I love it, man.
All right, bro. You take care, bro, and we'll tap in soon for our podcast. You can follow us, Culture Conversation. We'll be back for our next episode next week. But yeah, just follow us and stay tuned for our next episode. All right, we're checking out with my man Alex of the Gifted Gab. Shout out to everybody on the east side as well as my boys out in the west, bro. So y'all take care. All right, bro. Peace.